Welcome back to Why We Buy It. Today we want to talk about cruising because we haven't done that in a while. And we're going to start off with what we recommend you do on your first cruise as North Americans. And we want to start with...
Basically, what we're going to begin with is the length of the cruise. Because the length can determine a lot of things. But most importantly, for your first cruise, you don't quite know if this is for you yet. So it's not like you want to hop on a world cruise, right? Or a transatlantic or something like that.
No.
You want to start with just enough days to get a feel for what cruising is like, get an opportunity to check out the ship, see what the ship has to offer, and hopefully stop at a few locations that you're interested in. So 7 days is about perfect to us.
Yeah, like I find anything under 7 days, and we've, watched other YouTubers as well, and they've said, the 3 to 4 days, whether it's in the Caribbean or the Mediterranean, it kind of turns into more of a booze cruise. If that's your thing, by all means, go for it, but that's not what we're into.
Those short-term itineraries are generally a couple of days at sea and 2 days at one or two stops.
Yeah.
That are generally party stops, and then back. So that's all that's about, right? It's having a extended party on a ship. And for your first time,
we don't recommend it.
That's not going to give you a good idea what cruising is all about.
Yeah.
Then when you get into, I would say 7 to 9 days is about as long as you want to go in your first cruise. But generally speaking, you're looking for an itinerary that does have a couple of days at sea, so you have time to really explore the ship. Yeah. Plus the 7 days gives you time to sort of settle in, right? You don't feel like you have to be full go the second you get on the ship.
Yeah.
And generally that's a long enough itinerary to have a few stops that you're going to enjoy,
That's
right? The places you want to see. So you'll get the full cruise experience. But that being said, where do you want to go for those 7 days as a North American cruiser? And there are so many options.
There's options galore.
Everywhere. But as a North American,
our flights are a fortune.
It can be costing a lot to go to certain places. So
Yeah.
there are a couple of locations very close to people who live in North America that are kind of like classic cruise destinations and offer a lot, plus are very competitive in the cruise market, so you can find yourself some great deals.
Yeah, so if you're living more on the west coast of Canada, you would probably look more towards Alaska, which we'll get into it, it's gorgeous. And then when you're more on the east coast, that's when you're going to look more to the Caribbean. However, it's totally up to you.
Yeah, we're not saying you should go to the Caribbean because you're on the east coast, or you should go to Alaska on the west coast.
Yeah.
We're saying one of those destinations will be better for you depending on what kind of cruiser you are.
That's right. Or what you want to experience.
The kind of experience you want to have. So just because you live on one coast or the other, don't make that the deciding factor, because it's not that brutal a flight to get to either, right? No matter where you're at, it's not that brutal. And again, you're flying within North America, so the cost tends to be a little bit lower as well.
Yeah.
Right? Now, looking at those two destinations, they offer very different things.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so let's begin with Alaska.
Alaska's beautiful. So Alaska's going to offer you nature galore. It's got fantastic little towns, salmon for days.
Yeah.
Cope still has dreams about the salmon that he had in Alaska.
Right. It's a unique experience.
Yeah.
And it's a unique opportunity for a lot of people because the landscape and the glaciers and such and all that you're going to see there is something you can't see in
Toronto.
90% of the world, right?
Yeah.
No, it's just you just can't see it.
Yeah.
Right? Then on the flip side, you've got the Caribbean. And with the Caribbean, again,
you got beaches.
Beautiful nature, right? Just a different kind of thing. You got the tropical climates, right? You've got this traditional holiday feel for the average North American, especially Canadians. When they think holiday, nine times out of 10, people are thinking the Caribbean because that's just our classic holiday destination.
Yeah.
But when cruising, it offers a different... You get more out of a cruise than you would out of your traditional.
Yeah, because it's kind of like being in an all-inclusive, but
with adventure.
Exactly. So it makes it that much more exciting, especially when you're kind of like people like us that are on the go constantly. So it's nice to kind of have everything kind of mixed in.
Yeah. Right? So when deciding which one of these two destinations is better for you, it first of all begins. Not 100% of the time, there's always exceptions to the rule, but it begins with age, right? So if you're a younger cruiser, a younger couple or whatever, which one would you suggest first off?
Probably the Caribbean.
The Caribbean.
Because
100% the Caribbean.
For the most part, like everyone we talk to that's more around our age that are younger, you know, they're always talk to us about all inclusives, and we're like, guys, just try a Caribbean cruise. Like, you can drink your faces off when you get off the ship or on the ship.
But again, it's that classic holiday feel.
Yeah.
Right? You're talking. It appeals to younger cruisers because first of all, you're going to have more, you know, physical activities on the ship.
Yeah.
Right? Because of the great weather.
Yeah.
Right? Because of the solid climate year round. No matter when you're there, you're going to have beautiful sunshine and beaches and everything. And generally the ships are also set up to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a lot of outdoor activities top deck on the ship. Whereas in Alaska, it appeals more to older cruisers because, again, the weather isn't fantastic.
It's kind of like fall.
Yeah, year round, right? So it's not the best weather. You don't have as many outdoor activities.
You gotta pack more clothes.
It's not as physical a cruise experience, right? Or a travel experience. It's a lot less physical. A lot of your activities are going to be inside the ship, right? Port talks are very important because of the history there and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it tends to appeal a little bit more to older cruisers. And generally, the ships themselves, that factors in too, because when you have beautiful weather from 5 o'clock in the morning to 1 o'clock in the morning, these big, impressive super ships with water slides and zip lines and massive pools.
Yeah.
It's great to take advantage.
Yeah.
But when your daylight is shortened because you're so far north, and it's pretty
colder.
cold in the morning and very cold in the evening, you have a shorter period of time, so those big super ships aren't as appealing when you're in Alaska.
No.
And as a result of that, the size of the ship really matters.
Right. So when you're in Alaska, you do want to aim for a smaller ship. One, so you don't have to tender in, right?
Because if there's tender spots.
If there's tender spots, because then you can also miss a port too if they have like
bad
rocky,
weather.
Rocky waters or just bad weather in general.
And two, a lot of those bigger ships have to dock. Even though they do dock, they dock very far away from like the point of where you're going to. Like you could be an hour away from the city you want to visit.
That's right. So you're gonna have to like port, take like however long of a bus to get to the main city. So when you're on a smaller ship, it is an advantage in Alaska because it just docks right there. You're in the city. You might not even have to do a shore excursion because Kobe and I didn't do it in a couple spots, and we just walked the city and it was beautiful.
Yeah, we visited Alaska with Norwegian. It was on one of their smaller Norwegian ships. And again, Norwegian, they aren't the smallest ships.
Nope.
But it was small enough
yeah.
that there was only two spots that we took buses and such from, and one was because we booked a tour to the Yukon, and there's no way getting there without a bus or a train or however you want to get there. But for the most part, we just walked off the ship and did our own thing because it docked right in town.
Yeah,
right. So that's a huge advantage, and because we had mentioned the competition at these two locations for cruising is high, I've seen itinerary, like 7-day, 8-day itineraries in Alaska with Azamara, which only does like 700 person ships. These are very small ships for less than $2,000 American, right? So that's a pretty reasonable price to be on a high-end luxury ship that's small, where you're not going to have to tender or take a bus anywhere.
Right.
It docks right where you want to be.
Yeah.
Right? And on those higher-end luxury vessels, pretty much everything's included.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like one price and you're done. You know, so that's something you would consider in Alaska.
Yeah.
Now in the Caribbean,
different.
It's the opposite.
Totally different. I would recommend doing one of those cool super ships, like a Royal Caribbean. I think Carnival's got one now.
Norwegian
has one because, like Cobe said, the weather's so good all day and all night. So you're taking full advantage of the ship and what the ship has to offer, and now they're offering you like everything in the sun.
Yeah, you got to remember most cruise itineraries, generally speaking, the all aboard at every location is somewhere between 4 and 7.
Yeah, something like that.
In most cases, it's usually 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Right? So when you get back on the ship in the Caribbean, I mean, if it's, let's say it's 5 p.m., minimum you've got 5 hours of still great weather
Yep.
to take advantage of once you're back on ship.
Yep.
It's different when you get back on at 5 in Alaska and you're like, I want to be indoors.
You don't want to be outside.
Right? I want to be inside where
Yeah.
it's warm,
Yeah.
right? It's very different.
Mm-hmm.
So those bigger ships, you could take full advantage on a short, 7-day cruise.
Yeah, and they also like the ports are easy for those super ships to just roll up, and so you don't have to worry about ever tendering in a Caribbean.
Yeah,
in the
most
Caribbean
of the
seas,
islands,
so.
most of the islands have very deep docks.
Yeah.
Right. So these ships can just roll right up, and there's usually a beach right there.
Yeah.
Right, and there's always things that happen within close proximity of the ship. Now, when you're looking at what to do once you get off these ships, again, it's similar in this case.
Yes.
Both of these destinations offer you some great shore excursions that you can book, whether it be through the cruise line or through a third party, and we've got a video on that. You can check it out on the channel.
Yep.
I'll leave a link to it here. But they've got that, but they also have the ability, in both cases, provided you go with a smaller ship in Alaska, to do your own thing.
Oh yeah.
So you're completely left up to your own devices, and on your first cruise, I would say do a combination of both.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like I think we've mentioned in a video before where like we always do a shore excursion on the very first port day we have, because it's a very cool way of like meeting new people
On your ship.
and just getting a feel for the atmosphere, right? But yeah, in Alaska we did a phenomenal side tour to the Yukon, which
Amazing.
highly recommend.
Absolutely amazing.
Highly recommend. But in the Caribbean, I don't think we ever did a shore excursion because we're like, it's right there. Like,
No, we did a shore excursion.
did we do one?
We did the rafting.
Oh, yes.
Right? Which,
Yes.
again, was great.
We did the rafting.
It was fantastic.
Yes.
But at the same time, on our Alaska cruise, we walked Ketchikan, and it was one of my favorite places in all of Alaska.
Because he ate all the smoked salmon.
But it's just an amazing little town, right? It's
Yeah,
this town that's built
great.
alongside a river. You could watch the salmon run. We watched seals having a smorgasbord in the river, just
I
picking
think we
salmon.
were there for like 3 hours just
Right?
watching seals.
Amazing. And that was just us walking off the ship doing our own thing.
Yeah.
And then in the Caribbean, we have a video about it, about getting off at St. Thomas. We had a funny experience. But again, we're just hanging out, doing our own thing, having fun, right?
Yeah.
So it goes both ways. There's positives to both aspects, whether you book shore excursions or you do your own thing.
Yeah.
And both of these destinations give you both opportunities.
Yeah.
Right? So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, talking about which cruise line you should go with, because we already mentioned it a bit, right? In Alaska, again, you want the smallest ship possible.
Yeah.
But
You don't want a super ship.
You also want to go with I would say a more luxurious ship if you can. Because you're inside that ship for such a long time on those cruises, because you're basically indoors. You want that luxurious classic cruise feel.
But you also want a lot of entertainment. You want to make sure it's a cruise ship that is kind of known to entertain. So, we love Celebrity.
Yeah.
Hands down, we absolutely love them.
They have some smaller classes.
They have some
So if
small
you're going to go with
classes.
Celebrity, I would say anything but their Edge class ships.
Yeah. But when we went to Alaska, we took Norwegian, and I was very, very impressed on how much entertainment was on this ship. It was absolutely fantastic, and like you said, we're inside because it's Alaska and it's cold outside, so you're not hanging out on like a lawn or on a lounge chair, right? But they had just entertainment galore on
Keep in
Norwegian.
mind, a lot of your entertainment and how much you enjoy it's going to come down to the programs they have, the entertainment director. If you get lucky, you get a great one. It could be better than an average one. But for your first time, I'm sure you're going to enjoy it because you've never dealt with this before.
Yeah.
So you're still going to have fun.
You're going to have fun.
Right?
And honestly, make the most of it. You're never going to see these people again unless you're us and you're just showing yourselves off. But, take advantage of everything they have to offer you on the ship, because the entertainment, the first time I went on, I was a little shy and I was like, I don't want to be involved. And now we're like, let's be involved in everything. Right?
And in the Caribbean, you don't have to go as high end. In the Caribbean, I would say a luxury vessel isn't as important. Mm-hmm. You just want the newest ship you can find. The newer ships have the best amenities, right? Yeah. They have the most amazing extras on the ship, and when you're going to spend so much time top decks having fun.
Yeah.
You want the newest gadgets and interesting things to play with while you're there.
Especially
so look
if you
for
have
newer
children.
ships, right? So
Yeah.
again, like because we love celebrity, I would say edge class ships.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the name of it, but Norwegian has a new super ship. Basically, anything that's classified as a resort at sea.
Yeah.
Royal Caribbean has many,
Yeah.
right? Their Oasis class ships are fantastic. Anything of the seas
Yeah.
is worth getting on.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just look up when a ship was, its first, put to sea.
Yeah.
And the newer it is, probably the better it is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's options there. And then of course, if your budget is greater, if you're really a high roller, you can always go for the very high end ships,
Yes,
right?
of
So
course.
something that's beyond our budget, right? Region of Seven Seas or Oceania or something like
Yeah.
that. You could go that route, but I mean that's entirely up to you and up to your budget. But
Mm-hmm.
for your first cruise, I would say look for something that's within your budget, within reason. Don't take the cheapest deal. Period.
No.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
And like we said, small ships up north, big ships down south. Now, if you are traveling as a family, okay, there are positives and negatives to both. Okay, so let's begin with the positives.
So I'm going to start with the Caribbean on the positive, and the super ships alone, just the super ship alone.
They generally have whole sections dedicated to kids.
Yeah, like I feel like they have like their own floor that has everything they could want, but then you also have just the out and about everything. So you have your water slides, you have your go-karts, you have your basketball courts, and
Your wave riders.
Like I don't even know anymore what they have on their ships
It's
because
so much.
they keep adding more and more and more. So as a child, if I got to experience this as a child,
It's like a floating Disneyland.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's literally what
right?
it is.
It's like that would blow my mind if I was a kid.
Speaking of which, you've also got the Disney option, right?
Yes.
Disney has their own cruises. So
Yes.
if your kid's into
We-
Disney or you're into Disney,
Yeah.
you can admit it.
We haven't done a Disney cruise, so we can't really speak too much on how amazing
because
it
we
is.
don't
But I'm
have kids,
assuming it is.
right? Because we don't have kids, we figured we'll stay away from Disney.
Yeah.
But you have that option.
Yes.
So that's the Caribbean.
Alaska, same thing. Alaska is very cool, but if you have an adventurous kid and they're fully into nature, like this is a cruise for them. Now, same thing. Like we were on Norwegian, so they had like a floor dedicated to like a kid's room. They didn't
Smaller
have,
area. But
they're-
they still had
it's not-
video games. They had
Arcades.
like the arcade. They had like like table hockey and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
They had that available.
And there was a bunch of fun little activities going on around the ship that I think would have been great for a family too.
But whereas the Caribbean is like being at Disneyland, Alaska, if you plan it right, can be like a trip to the zoo.
Yes.
Only in its natural habitat, right? And
Yeah.
kids love that too.
Yeah.
If you got kids with you, like of course we don't have kids, but there are people on the ship who had kids.
Yeah.
And we met a few, and
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, we went and saw the whales today," and
Yeah.
you should see their eyes. They were showing us pictures of the kids just
Just stunned.
Right?
Yeah. And like, we had a couple times where dolphins were
following the
following
boat.
us around the boat, and the kids were like, look, and like it was so beautiful to see it through their eyes.
So
and
you
we're just
got
like,
whales. I mean, you go out in the country, you got
Bears.
bears and things like that, right? like we already mentioned, we were watching the seals for an hour,
Yeah.
just having fun,
Yeah.
killing salmon,
Yeah.
right? So they have that too,
Yeah.
right? And then even, I was blown away the first time I saw some of the landscapes, right? But so are the kids.
Yeah.
It's just as impressive to them, only they're seeing it when they're still young,
Yeah.
right? And that's going to leave an impression.
Mm-hmm.
So both of them have
They're pros.
they're pros, but now here's the negatives. So the negative side, we'll begin with the Caribbean, is one, it's the Caribbean. It gets crazy hot.
Yeah.
We got lit up our first time to the Caribbean. We made the mistake of falling asleep on the beach. Again,
Watch that video.
Watch the video, right? But yeah, we got lit up. So I mean, kids, their skin's a lot of cases, very fair, very sensitive.
Yeah.
So you got to be
Mindful of that.
on the ball with that.
Yeah.
Right? That's the first thing. The second thing is these are super ships, so it can get crazy at times.
Yeah.
All right, these big ships, it can get crazy, and you're going to have to either trust them to stay in the kids zone or be mindful of where they're going on
Where
the
they're
ship,
at, right? Yeah.
And there have been some isolated incidents where on some of these big Caribbean cruises, because it's the Caribbean and people are pounding back the margaritas and rum and everything, that you can have some issues on the ship with people over drinking, and you got to watch your kids don't get mixed up in situations like that. So
Yeah.
that's something that's more limited to the Caribbean. And again, if you go on a much nicer cruise line, chances of that is slimmer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When you get to Alaska, it's, again, weather's a factor.
Yep.
Right? You got to watch out for things like frostbite or whatever, depending how cold it gets.
Yep.
Right? You got to make sure they're dressed properly,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. And the ships aren't as fun. Right? We're talking
No.
about getting on a smaller ship, getting close support and that. It's more about the ports
and the atmosphere
than it is
yeah.
the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there won't be as much for them to do. So maybe bring something along that they can amuse themselves with.
Yeah.
If they're into card games, when I was a kid, I was into Magic the Gathering, card games, things like that. It's a great thing to do while you're on a ship.
Yeah.
If they have little handheld video games or whatever to
Yeah.
bring along, right? Something
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah, it's just it's not Disneyland.
Correct.
It's not
Correct.
Disneyland. There is entertainment, but it's not as crazy as like a Royal Caribbean ship would be.
Yeah, so that's something to be mindful of. So that's what it comes down to with kids. Now, which one should you go with?
Totally up to you.
It's totally up to you, right?
Totally up
It's
to
totally
you.
up to you. We told you what Alaska gives you. We told you what the Caribbean gives you.
Mm-hmm.
We told you keep it around a week. Don't go under that.
Yeah.
Right? And that's pretty much all the information you'll need to make a really smart decision.
Yeah.
If you have any additional questions, put them in the comments.
comments.
We answer every comment.
Yeah.
Right? We're not that big a channel yet that we're like, oh shit, we can't get to everybody. We answer every comment. So if
Yeah.
you have a question, feel free to ask, right?
Yeah.
We'll definitely get back to you, and we'll get back to you quickly. And if you haven't yet,
Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell because 95% of you still have not subscribed to our channel. So please help us out, guys. It'll help us grow. And
yeah,
be
we've
better.
broken the 2,000 mark. We're really trying to get to 10,000. That's always been our goal,
Yeah.
right? Can we get to 10,000? After that, we'll see where it goes. But
Mm-hmm.
that's where we're trying to get to, and just do us a solid, help us get there.
Till next time.
Till next time.